Should Louisville basketball send out an offer to Gabe Sisk? And can the Cardinals go back into South Florida in the 2024 class and continue to recreate that pipeline into the Sunshine State? Well, it's all about recruiting on today's episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. So with that being said, let's get right on into the show.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. As always, I'm your host, Dalton Pence. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. I want to say thank you all, as I always do, for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder that the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team, every day. All about recruiting on today's episode of the show. We'll begin in the basketball department, talking about whether or not the Louisville Cardinals should offer hometown star and Ballard combo guard Gabe Sisk. We'll also go into the football recruiting realm, talk about the Cardinals offering South Florida four-star running back Jordan Lyle, and the Cardinals making the top 5 for highly touted defensive lineman from the South Florida area, Dalen Russell. So beginning in the basketball segment of the show, there hasn't been too much 2023 recruiting to talk about. Obviously, you have the two signees, Caleb Glenn and Curtis Williams. Most of the people, obviously, I think all of the people know that there has to be a roster overhaul in the offseason. Mostly is going to come from the transfer portal. But I want to talk about another possible 2023 name, one that's been talked about a lot, especially on the local social media, on Twitter, and that is this local push for the Cardinals to offer Ballard combo guard and hometown star Gabe Sisk. The 2023 6'6" combo guard has been phenomenal this season for the Bruins, averaging over 24 points per game, over 10 rebounds per contest as well. A player that doesn't get a lot of the spotlight as he should, but shout out to my guy, Deadstock Visuals, who does a great job of highlighting, talent all across the city, all across the state, does a great job, a pioneer at what he's doing in terms of high school coverage in the city of Louisville in the state of Kentucky. He's done a great job of shining that spotlight on what Gabe Sisk is doing, what he was able to do in the LIT this past weekend, 2 weekends ago, where he won the most valuable player, was phenomenal against St. X and Mail in the semis and finals, respectively. A lot of people are now wondering, why is Louisville not offering Gabe Sisk? Let's talk about this recruitment. Do I believe that the Cardinals should offer Gabe Sisk? Personally, I do. Let's talk about the opposition to this argument. People will look at this recruitment. Gabe Sisk is ranked as the 226th best player in the state, or I'm not in the state, in the country, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. Second best player in the state, according to the composite, and the 29th best combo guard. A lot of the argument is, well, Dalton, isn't this the type of recruit that got Louisville in this predicament anyway? Taking, fringe level Power 5 prospects and bringing them to Louisville. And is that, now not one of the reasons as to why we're seeing the struggles at the levels in which we're seeing them? Possibly. If I hadn't seen Gabe Sisk play for the past 4 years, I would be in that same line of thinking. But I know that there are exceptions to every rule. There are exceptions to every trend. I think that this is an exception. Obviously, there needs to be a lot of roster turnover in the offseason. That has to happen via the transfer portal. That does not take any of this away. I think, whether or not Caleb Glenn, Curtis Williams are going to be guys that are going to immediately produce at a substantial rate and contribute, I think that that's yet to be seen. But I think that Gabe Sisk is a prospect that is a type of prospect that we've seen from the state of Kentucky, the city of Louisville, guys that are very talented in the Louisville area that end up going potentially the JUCO route because they might not necessarily have the offers they believe they should have, or they go, mid-major and rise up through those ranks. We just saw Sean East go to Missouri and what he's been able to do. Kurt Lewis, Eastern Kentucky, went to JUCO, and now he's ending up at Missouri. So on and so forth. There's been multiple prospects like that, but I think that I understand that argument, and it's like, okay, 226, is this what Louisville really needs? I think that Gabe Sisk is a player that development-wise moving forward, he's a guy that can really help you win. Maybe not necessarily in the immediate future, but if you continue to develop him as a combo guard, with his size, 6'6", as a guy who can handle the basketball, I think that would be a huge addition to Louisville, because not only do you have to get ready level talent, from the transfer portal, but I also don't think it's bad to get guys that you could see progressing. Obviously, the additions of Fabio Basili and others have people wondering, can Kenny Payne recruit at the high level? And that is a question to be had. But I think Gabe Sisk is an exception, because I've seen him play for the past 4 seasons. I'm not saying that I know as much as the scouting, departments across the country or the services in that regard, but I really do find it hard to believe that there are 226 or 225 better prospects in the 2023 class than Gabe Sisk. He's been a guy over the past 4 years, has continually shined on the big stage, shined against IMG Academy, not IMG, Montverde a couple years ago down in the holiday tournaments down in Florida. Shined against guys like Reed Shepard, 5-star signee for Kentucky, and multiple players. I watched him as a freshman go from being a mainly perimeter shooter to now as a senior being more of a guy that initiates the offense and is the lead scorer all over the half court. I announce for Male, so I've been able to see Sisk since he started as a freshman play, because Male plays Ballard every year. It's some very, very solid matchups. They have been very competitive. Obviously, Caleb Glenn for Male. Ballard's had guys like Maker Barr, Terrence McDaniels, so on and so forth. A lot of talent on both of those sides, a lot of D1 talent. Sisk has always been a guy that has shown out in all of those games. Every game that I've announced that Sisk has played in, he's shown, that creation ability, the ability to create all within the half court at all 3 levels, solid control, taking it to the rim and finishing around the rim, can really shoot the ball from anywhere inside the half court and is not afraid to pull without much room to do so from behind the arc. Does a good job of getting to his spots in the half court and being able to score from those spots. Doesn't really necessarily get sped up or slowed down, but kind of goes at his pace. Isn't the most athletic in terms of lateral quickness, but has good size for a guard. 6'6", 180 pounds, can handle the basketball, plays good defense, can guard 1 through 3, possibly 1 through 4. And what I like most about is that we've seen it develop. He actually went out to transfer to a prep school, ended up coming back to Ballard during his senior season. And I think that, maybe the rationale early on was that, early on in his career was that, well, he's not the main focal point of defenses. Well, now he is, and he's averaging over 20 and 10. Now, obviously, it's in the state of Kentucky where maybe he doesn't necessarily get the chance to develop against top talent, but I think that he's a guy that has everything you're looking for in a combo guard, a guy that might not necessarily be a primary ball handler, but definitely a secondary or tertiary ball handler, an able ball handler, and you can't necessarily have too many of those on the court, as we've seen through Louisville's lack of guard play this season. Solid perimeter shooter, something that Louisville needs. A guy that is just a player that is very unselfish with the basketball, makes the extra passes. When I announced the LIT final a couple weeks ago, I was extremely impressed by his willingness to give the rock up, make those passes that hockey assists, those that don't get recorded in the stat sheet, but that lead to buckets. And he's not afraid or hesitant to make those passes. A great teammate, a guy that is just an absolute, phenom on both ends of the court. Solid defender as well. Solid on-ball defender. Has, like I said, good length for being 6'6", a very, very tall guard. And I think that, in my opinion, I understand the concerns with him being ranked in the 230s, not having a Power 5 level offer. I get it. And if you say that he shouldn't get an offer, I'm not going to sit here and disagree with you. Me personally, my opinion is that he is one of the top 100 players in this class. I've watched him play time and time again over the past couple seasons, and he's absolutely balled out. and he's gotten better each and every season. There's been aspects of his game that have grown each and every season. And now, I mean, it's hard to look at Sisk and believe that he's not on the levels of guys like Caleb Glenn or Georgia Washington III, because he's consistently competed with those guys over the past couple seasons. So in my opinion, he should get a Louisville offer. But hey, I'm not a coach. I'm not a scouting director, so if you say that you don't believe he should, or if Louisville doesn't give an offer, I'm not going to argue, but that's just my opinion. But nonetheless, let's move on to football, where the Cardinals just recently offered a top prospect in the South Florida area, 4-star running back Jordan Lyle. We'll talk about that recruitment here in just a second after we talk about our friends and the title sponsor of the show, FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here. We're really excited about our new sports betting partner for Locked On, because they're the #1 sports book in America, FanDuel. And if you're new to FanDuel, that's even better. They have so many great features that make betting on sports fun and easy. New customers join today to get started with $150 in free bets guaranteed when you place your first measly $5 bet. Sign up at FanDuel.com/lockedon. You can go there on the website and check out all of the neat bets that they have for the AFC and NFC Conference Championship games, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So football fans, don't miss out. Place your first $5 bet to get $150 in free bets, win or lose, at FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Hey, Cardinal fans, thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. Make sure you check out our brand new podcast, Locked On College Basketball. Everything you need to know about college basketball all in one place. Plus, hear from big-name experts, insiders, coaches, and players. Locked On College Basketball, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Moving right on along into the football recruiting segments of the show. First, beginning with a new offer handed out over the past couple days, a player that has gotten a lot of top offers over the past 72 hours. That is 4-star running back Jordan Lyle from the Fort Lauderdale area. 2024 prospect is ranked as the 301st best player in the country, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite, the 26th best running back, and the 47th best player in the state of Florida. We talked, obviously, a couple weeks ago about how Jeff Brohm and company are trying to continue to take that South Florida pipeline and the state of Florida pipeline to new heights. 2 prospects already committed, Isaac Brown and TJ Capers. Both are relevant in this conversation. Isaac Brown for this segment, TJ Capers for the next segment. So we'll get into that here shortly. But obviously, the Cardinals have 2 commitments in the 2024 class. One of them is a running back in Isaac Brown, a 4-star prospect from the Miami area. Obviously, another running back offer out from the staff. I think this makes sense. For Louisville fans out there, no inside information, but it makes sense for the Cardinals to want to get multiple running backs in this class, because you look at the future of the position as it pertains to the current roster at Louisville. Right now, you have Jawar Jordan, Maurice Turner, Isaac Gurindo, and Kewan Brown. And 2024, so Isaac Gurindo is a grad transfer, I do believe. So this will probably be his last season, I do believe. So that leaves you with 3 players: Jawar Jordan, Kewan Brown, Maurice Turner. I would imagine that Brown and Turner are back. But this season, we could see Jawar Jordan go to the NFL draft. I'm not necessarily sure of what his collegiate eligibility is looking like. Let me go to his statistical bio. So he's played 4 seasons. He does get, actually, I'm not sure if this might be his last. Well, he's technically classified as a sophomore, I believe. I need to go back and see the game logs. So 2019, he played in 4 games. 2020, he played in 3 games. So it looks like, he has multiple years of eligibility left due to him not playing over the 4-game threshold, listed as a sophomore this past year. So if he wants it, it seems like he can be back after this upcoming season. But look, this is a guy that last year on 142 carries, had 815 yards, 4 touchdowns, 5.7 yards per carry. Came into the season as a player that a lot of people didn't expect to have a big role in this offense. Some injuries before him. I'm just saying I predicted Jawar Jordan to be over 1,000 yards this upcoming season. I'm still sticking with that prediction. I think if he does, he's going to go to the NFL draft, leaving 2 players. It leaves you Kewan Brown, and it leaves you Maurice Turner. And then, obviously, if you hold on to the commitment of Isaac Brown, you have 3 running backs in the class. You're going to need to bring 1 more in, maybe even 2 more, just kind of depending on the development of Turner and Kewan Brown. So if you are the Cardinals, obviously this makes a ton of sense to go after more highly rated running backs in the class. It's not uncommon for teams to do that whatsoever, especially now that Louisville is just continuing to try to take away any depth issues or anything like that. But Jordan Lyle is a fantastic prospect, 6 foot, 180-pound running back, like I said, from the South Florida area. His tape is absolutely incredible. He's a guy that once he gets to that second level of the defense, it is really, really tough for the opposing defense to stop him from getting to the opposing infield or end zone, not infield, end zone. I think that his ability to make guys miss at the line of scrimmage, he's very, very shifty. Almost all of his highlights, now granted, these are huddle tapes, so it doesn't show the runs in which weren't successful, but in almost all of his big runs, it almost always starts with the juke move, sidestepping to the left or right, changing direction very quickly. Being 6 foot, 180 pounds, is kind of not necessarily a full-on power back, but not a full-on speed back either. I think that he is a player that, brings both aspects to the equation, a guy that is strong enough to get into that second level of the defense and fast enough that if you give him the angle, it's going to be very tough to chase him down. And I think that he's a guy that you look at what he's been able to do on film. He's a player that if he gets into the open field, there's likely not a chance that you're going to catch him. Jordan Lyle is a phenomenal runner in between the tackles, does a good job of, seeing the holes open up, seeing the gaps open up in the offensive line and being able to push right through them very quickly. Quick decision maker as well, solid footwork to get through those gaps. Has a ton of offers to his name right now, Alabama, Arkansas, so on and so forth. Just picked up an offer from USC over the past week. Oklahoma, Alabama, Purdue, Louisville, and USC. So you would assume that he's probably going to rise to above the 301 ranking currently, and it kind of speaks to how good the state of Florida is recruiting-wise, because he's 47th in the class right now, which is absolutely wild to even think about. But looking statistically at what he's done this past year, had a breakout season. In 2021, had 34 carries for 225 and 2 touchdowns. This year, absolutely had a breakout season, 91 carries for 1,015 yards to go along with 12 touchdowns. And that's a very, very efficient yards per carry number as well. I don't even have the math on the top of my head, but 91 carries for over 1,000 yards is pretty dang good. So ultimately, over 10 yards per carry. So this is a recruitment that I want to see Louisville continue to try to get involved with. Going to be easier said than done with a lot of the big schools getting involved, Miami, USC, Alabama, so on and so forth. The main thing here, like I said, with a lot of these prospects is getting them on campus for a visit, whether that's in the summer, official visit during the season, just trying to create some momentum early on. We've seen Louisville go into this cycle already in the South Florida area and do some work on the recruiting trail for Flyville 24 in the 305 and the surrounding areas. So we'll see if the Cardinals continue to build that pipeline. But it seems like whatever they're doing is working pretty solidly, especially, speaking of TJ Capers, his teammate Daylen Russell, defensive lineman for Columbus High School in the Miami area, cut his list to 5. And guess what? the Cardinals made that list. We're going to talk about that recruitment here in just a second. First, before we do that, I want to say thank you all once again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen of the day. It doesn't go unnoticed, all of the support that you all have been giving this show since it debuted in August of 2021. Continuing to grow on YouTube, on all of the streaming services, audio-wise, on social media. Thank you to everyone that is sharing, subscribing, rating, listening to the pod on whatever streaming service you use. So definitely does not go unnoticed. Heading into the final segment, Dalen Russell, a player that is highly touted from the Miami area, Columbus High School defensive lineman, just cut his list to 5. Louisville made that list along with, looking at it, UCF, Nebraska, Miami, and Florida State. So there's a lot of Sunshine State flavor in the top 5. 60% of the final list is composed of schools from the Sunshine State. And Daylen Russell is an interesting recruitment, currently not rated in the 2024 class, but had a phenomenal season last year. The 6', 230-pound defensive lineman was the Miami Herald's Miami-Dade County Defensive Player of the Year. He is a player that finished, I think, top 5, maybe even top 3 in terms of tackles on the team. That included players like TJ Capers and Dylan Stevenson. And think about that. I mean, this defense for Columbus High School in Miami is absolutely stacked. Not only do you have TJ Capers, who's one of the best edge rushers in the country, you have a top 100 edge rusher in Dylan Stevenson. And then on the interior, you have a guy like Dalen Russell, who won Defensive Player of the Year. He had 57 tackles, 14 for a loss, 6 quarterback hurries, and 4 sacks, according to Jody Demling of 24/7 Cardinal Authority, the Louisville site on that website. That was as a sophomore. This past season, 51 tackles, 40 solo tackles, 7 sacks, 6 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hurries, 1 fumble recovery, and 1 forced fumble. You look at the tape for Daylen Russell. He's a guy that opposing offensive linemen struggle with to create leverage against. Russell is an interesting recruitment because he's not necessarily all that tall, and he doesn't, have a ton of weight that, highly rated Power 5 defensive linemen have. So I wonder where he's going to land in the rankings. I would say he's probably definitely a mid 3-star, especially. I'm a person that says follow the offer sheet. When there are questions surrounding a recruit's ranking, follow the offer sheet, because that's a very good telltale sign of how good a prospect is, because you're talking about coaches and their scouting. So I wonder if he's going to translate at the next level to more of an interior guy or on the edge. That'll be interesting to see what Jeff Brohm, Ron English, and Mark Hagan and Mark Ivy, not Mark Havey, that's not even a person that I'm aware of who they are, what they project him to be. But obviously nice that Louisville is in the mix here. He did visit over the fall, so it's going to be interesting to see if they can get him back on campus. It can't hurt that you have his highly rated teammate TJ Capers committed, but this would be a solid addition to Louisville, just considering that you're continuing to add to the defensive line depth. Guys are, we have some veteran guys in that group now. Des Tell, I assume Jermaine Lalay's back. So assuming that he's back, he's a guy that is probably gone after this year. It'll be interesting to see how Daylen Russell is going to approach the timeline to his recruitment and see, when he's going to make his decision, when he's going to make some visits. But going to be hard to go up against Mike Norvell at Florida State, going to be hard to go up against Mario Cristobal at Miami, going to be hard to go up against, let's see, what was the other school? Nebraska and UCF would probably be teams that are going to be tough to go up against as well. But I think that this is a guy that kind of gets overlooked in a very, very talented area in the South Florida area that we talk about, players getting overlooked, diamonds in the rough type prospects. So I think this will be solid, and another solid opportunity for Jeff Brohm and company to continue that South Florida to the Flyville, or 305 to the Flyville, the movement or the trend, whatever you want to call it. But ultimately, a recruitment that I would like to see Louisville into the very end. I think they will be. It's just going to be a matter of trying to get him on campus and possibly getting the deal sealed before his senior season. So we'll see in terms of what the timeline looks like for that. But tomorrow's episode will be about Lamar Jackson, his future, whether or not he will stay with the Ravens. And if he doesn't, what are the best landing spots possibly for him in a trade? So we'll talk about him with Tony Wiggins, the host of Locked On Jaguars and one of the hosts of Locked On NFL. So be sure to stay tuned into that. But that's going to wrap up this Thursday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. We will see you right back here tomorrow.